Hi, everyone. This is my huge pleasure today to introduce a friend, Maymoona Ismail. She has been involved in social development projects and youth development projects for many years, both in a corporate setting as well as lately as a solopreneur. I think we all have a lot to learn from how she's managed the transition from a corporate career into a solopreneur, and not only in her own country, but moving to a different country and get things started. So, Maymoona, thank you for joining us. I hope that everybody will really enjoy to hear your story. And thank you for volunteering to be a soloSei legend. Please start by telling us your story.
Okay, thank you, Willem. I hope I live up to your expectations during this podcast. But yeah, I've you've worked in corporate for I'm almost 25 years. I started off when I was 19 in the corporate environment, and had an interesting journey through various roles and different industries and different organizations. And I think in 2022, I was forced out of the corporate world purely because we were relocating to another country. And I had to really, really think about what I wanted to do. And at first, it was exciting to move to a new country. You know, you're exploring new things and you want to start creating a home outside home. Uh, we are in Delhi in India, so it's full of history and lots of cultural things that you need to learn and all of that. So the first few months were caught up in that hype of setting up a space for us. But after a while, and having worked in a senior management role in a corporate and being surrounded by people and having meetings and really stretching your thought processes in a corporate, I found myself really bored at home. Just being a home executive or a housewife just was not in my DNA at all. Needed the mental stimulation, needed connection with people that were thinking about things that were important to me and those kinds of things. And so prior to leaving South Africa, I knew I had to do something for myself. So I'd done the necessary, registered a company in South Africa, got all of that going. And then, I think it was about 4 months into my journey in India, I was like, okay, I really, really need to do something with my life. And I think my husband was experiencing the most amount of frustration because I was desperate for information from him, and he'd come from work and I'd be picking his brain about what's happening, what's it like working here, that kind of thing. And it was like, okay, I have other work to do except like keep your mind stimulated at this point in time. So really started thinking about what I wanted to do. And I think for me, it was important that, there wasn't a real need for me to look at a financial need or financial to satisfy a financial need at that point in time. For me, the two most important things was to keep my mind busy and occupied, and to stretch me intellectually, but also to keep my soul satisfied because I've always been involved in social impact kind of work. And so trying to find that happy medium was a bit difficult at first, because I knew very little about India. I could see where I could add value, um, but not, I didn't know how to break into this market at all. But I know what I do know and what I love is South Africa and the African continent. And so I was like, okay, how do I do back home, work back home? And again, um, it wasn't like an aha moment. Like, it's like it's filtering a lot of things along the way. It's like, what am I good at? What do I know? Who do I know? How can I land this properly? So it took a while. And a few lessons that I learned along the way was, firstly, I left corporate and I almost forgot that I had a whole quite an extensive network in the corporate world. And when I left corporate and I announced that on LinkedIn, I I received quite a few messages via LinkedIn, yeah, private messages on LinkedIn, say, hey, uh, would be so great to collaborate with you. Reach out if you have some time, that kind of thing. And I'd ignored that for such a long time. It was like not in my peripheral or anywhere near what I thought I would be able to do with these individuals that had reached out to me.
Did
And
you underestimate the power and willingness of your network to help and support you?
I really, really did. It was like, and I think it felt like I was, um, and it's probably a mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make when they move from corporate to becoming an entrepreneur. You almost want to divorce the two. It's like that was my corporate life, and this is now me as an entrepreneur. And you forget that the connections that you built and the brand that you built during that time could aid you in this journey of being a solopreneur.
Love that. That's a good
Um,
point that you're making. Is
and I just when I look back now, it's what landed me the first bits of work that I started doing. And again, it's not, it can't be about the money originally, because it should be, and it should be easy for solopreneurs to do that. It's just to get my hands dirty, actually, to see what I can do. And 2.5 months of really intensive work led nowhere, absolutely no way. It was, it was just a beautiful proposal and a lovely presentation that landed me nothing. It was
it.
just, it
Yeah.
was just one of those things that happens. And I think my first kind of contract work that I landed was through an association that I had with the youth development organization in the Western Cape. And they were looking to solve for unemployment in the Western Cape. And um, the person reached out to me and said, "Hey, don't you want to put together a proposal for this?" And I'm like, "Oh." Uh, and then, second lesson I learned is that I can't be choosy about who I want to work with, and so for me, it was a government organization, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted government as a client because of about delayed payments and getting through the procurement hurdles, and I was like, oh. And then I realized, actually just go with it. And again, it started off as a journey, and got shortlisted in the process, procurement process, presented, and again I put in a proposal for the entire project and was awarded one tiny little piece in the project. And I got excited about that. It's like, oh, like it's my first thing that I actually can write a business proposal without having, following the normal, very formal MBA kind of process of doing this. Let me just take this project. And then I waited and I waited and I waited. It's like, okay, when is this project kicking off? And there was a change of guard in the leadership in there, and then the project died. So second kind of knock in, like, oh, like, okay, now what do I do?
That's a,
And
it's also an interesting point and a good kind of awareness point or lesson point for solopreneurs is when we make that transition, especially if you make a transition from a corporate environment where you are used to that your salary is going to come in at the end of the month in any way, whether projects are delayed or not, where
mm,
suddenly you realize that actually if projects are delayed and it's not even your fault, but you are the one that's most impacted because there's no
yeah,
income coming.
yeah,
So yeah, I guess over time you learn that you cannot just wait for one project. You have to
yes.
work several projects and opportunities in the pipeline all the time. You have to keep it alive.
And that's when the network started becoming important, right? Because it was like I was doing one. I was doing one proposal at a time and then waiting for an answer and doing another proposal and waiting for an answer and doing another proposal and waiting for an answer. And it doesn't work like that. You've got to, it feels like attacking on all fronts at this point in time, and 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 just figuring out where can I add. And I think for me it was trying to figure out where I could add the most value, as based on the brand that I had built in South Africa, what is the value that I could add. And for me, it was in that employability space, in terms of what do we do to prepare young people for the world of work, and how can they assimilate into these environments a lot easier. And so that's what I
There's
started.
so many beautiful gems coming out here, and already, I mean, also that point around looking at what value you have to add, and I think so many young people are in this kind of dream world, or I'm going to follow my passion and everything, which is great, but at the end of the day, what are the skills that you have that the world needs from
Needs.
you, that where you can bring value right now? That's the best place to start, and start building a career and a revenue stream as a solopreneur.
Yeah. And that's what I started doing. And I mean, the first major contract I had hit me from absolutely nowhere. I didn't expect it to come from there. It wasn't something that I was actively pursuing or anything like that. I'd written probably about 20 or 30 proposals that I had sent out to different people, different networks, different contacts in my network. And this actually came from my previous job. I had presented to a group of foreign a foreign company around. They were looking at trying to solve for unemployment in on the African continent, and I had spent like a good 2 hours with them, talking to them about some of the challenges we experience and that kind of thing. And they approached me to say, hey, like, do you want to come and work for us or do some consulting work for us? So I started off like 10 hours a month with them. And after 2 months of just, again, that thing about creating value to the organization is such an important, it's a lesson that came to me from corporate, because I remember having to go to to a business. So I started off the youth development initiatives at Standard Bank within a particular business sector, and I had to go and present it to another section of the bank. And the first thing the HR lady asked me is, what value is this program to my business? And I couldn't answer that question. So I've always, and since then I've always been like, if I'm talking to somebody and I'm trying to get them to commit to something, I need to understand of what value it is going to bring to them. And so the work also must reflect that, so it's no use having a good value proposition in terms of I can solve your problem. You must also be able to solve the problem. And 2 months into doing work for them, they said to me, okay, can we like get you on a bit of a retainer, and can we buy more hours of your time? And then by month 6, I was dedicated my time to them fully. But it was starting something new on the African continent. It was putting policies and processes and getting things up and running, which really, it's kind of like my sweet spot for me, with social impact. Really worked really well for me. And yeah, I and slowly starting to think about, it was a contract after all, right? Like, how do you how do you finish a contract? Like, what does it feel like? I've never been in that position ever in my life. Like, I've always had a corporate job, a never ending kind of corporate job, used to a
In a
salary.
corporate job, you always know that maybe this might end, whereas in a contract, this will
No,
end, and
it's going
there
to
has to
end.
be a
Yes.
contingency plan for it.
So trying to balance out what what else is going to happen. And the thing that I found is that you're continually learning when you're a solopreneur. And it's not, and if you stop learning or you stop being part of broader conversations in around the work that you're doing, that you're not going to see any opportunities that come along. So, and let's use you and I as an example, right? I met you probably about 5 years ago, I think it was, and we started having a conversation. And I mean, I see you doing things on LinkedIn. I'm sure you see me doing things on LinkedIn. I was like, no, nothing going, that kind of thing. And then I think I saw your really interesting LinkedIn post around AI in education, with something that really gets me excited. And because in my head I've always been wanting to solve for how do we take one good teacher and make it available to a million young kids, as opposed to unleashing 100 bad teachers to tens and thousands of kids. So, and that's when I connected with you again. I was like, hey, like, what are you doing? Be nice to chat. And we chatted about it. And so that ability to start seeing opportunities is not confined to what I know. It's about being curious about what else is happening in the space. And so for me, that was really important. So, people talk to me, and somebody mentioned the other day, I was at an event, and they go like, you have such a broad range of interests. And I'm like, I have to, because in the space of youth development, it's not about only landing corporate jobs for young people. It's about understanding where we are short, there's a shortage of skills, understanding what's coming and what's trending in particular industries, and looking at how we redirect young people into that space. So I can comfortably have a conversation with you about hydroponics and aquaponics. I can talk to you about AI and machine learning, and I can talk to you about data analytics, and I can talk to you about the soft side of, being a really good HR person or that kind of thing. So that broad range, and I don't claim to be a master in any one of those things, but just knowing what is happening in each of the spaces, it's easy to start spotting opportunities where you can go and plug in a gap. So that for me is really something that I would encourage any. In fact, that's like my opening remark to most young people that I'm bringing into the workplace. Like, oh, you're in this industry. What kind of, like, who do you follow on LinkedIn? What groups do you belong on LinkedIn? Show me the work that you've done. Like, who are the greatest influencers in the space? Do you follow them? Are you reading any articles around these things? So it's this constant curiosity around what else is happening and how can it impact the work that I do. So yeah, that's a lot about me.
What a story. I mean, yeah, as I expected, just your intro already is, so many valuable pearls of wisdom and advice that I think people will find very valuable. So I want to ask you, so in this journey so far, what has been your biggest challenge and how did you overcome that?
I think the biggest challenge is finding what you're good at. And again, I keep talking about that sweet spot, is what is feeding you, feeding your soul, and feeding your mind. If you and trying to find that, I mean, I feel like if you have no passion for what you do, like if you're not emotionally invested in what you do, that you are not going to be able to overcome the hard times as a solopreneur. There's a certain level of resistance and persistence that's needed if you're going to be on this journey. And if you're not passionate about it, like the first setback you receive is going to kill you. Or as I've mentioned before, You might receive several setbacks, you know, initially and upfront, and somewhere in the middle of your journey, and you have to figure out how does this, you know, you got to keep it going, and you have to be at it all the time. So for me, it was filtering out the noise. I mean, I come from an HR background, so ask me to do anything in HR, I can do it. I can be an HR consultant. I can help you with employee relations. I can help you with onboarding. I can help you with payroll. I've done it. I've been there, done it, got the T-shirt. But does that what you know? It doesn't float my boat. It's not something that excites me. It's not something that keeps me awake in the night or gets me going in the morning. It's help actually solving for youth unemployment in South Africa that really it's at the heart of who and the core of who I am. So finding that, like I said to you, it wasn't a aha moment. I've been in youth development for just about most of my life. And I started off broad, like, oh, I can do anything in HR. And I was like, okay. Then I narrowed it down to learning and development, and then like slowly came to this. It was like a funnel journey almost, like filtering out the stuff. It was very difficult because you can see yourself like in a mind of a solopreneur. The more you leave out, you kind of feel like you're diminishing your income, like you are discarding revenue generating opportunities. And it's a scary space to it's a very scary place to be when you are in that you're like, oh, I can actually develop content. And that's a lot of, there's lots of freelance work available in that space. And then you need to ask yourself, how good am I going to be at it? And is that so for me, when people approached me to develop content, and I was seeing what was happening in the AI space. I mean, I constantly look at training companies and academic like universities that are so precious about content, and like it's freely available. You watch how we think about how you interact with AI to ask it for information, and it filters. I mean, we have to have a different set of skills to filter that information, but we can't be precious about content anymore. And the way you and I grew up consuming content and how young people are consuming content these days are radically different. Um, do I understand how they consume content? Yes. Do I have the expertise to deliver that content the way they have to? No. So it's like I'm not doing content development anymore. So it's just it's that getting over that hurdle, but also the ability to believe in yourself. I'm not sure I told you the story, but like years ago, in the early 2000s, my husband and I both left corporate jobs and decided that we're moving from Johannesburg to Durban, and we're going to be close to the family, and our kids going to grow up knowing who their family is. And over a period of, I would say, 6 months, we purchased a business where the business owner had crooked his books, and we bought the business, and within a year, I think we lost everything: our house, our cars, our investments that we had. And it created the fear of God in me, because I had two young kids. One was just starting school, one was a toddler. And when you can't afford like just paying for your child's school fees for them to go to a really nice school, all you look for is a stable income. It's like and for years people kept telling me, May, you should start your own consultancy and everything else. I was almost addicted, based on that experience, addicted to the monthly salary that was coming in, the nice bonus at the end of every year, that kind of thing. So it was a fixation with me. And for probably a decade before I actually became a solopreneur, people were saying to me, if you start your own consultancy, you'll do so well. And I was like, I'm quite happy. I get my 22 days of leave every year. I get my salary. I get my bonus. I get sick leave if I want to get sick leave. If I'm sick, it's paid for. It's not, because if you think of yourself as an entrepreneur, the days that you don't work is the days you don't get paid. So all of that was eating at my mind in terms of how can I make this work for me? So interestingly enough, after that contract that came up, I ended up not working a 40-hour week. I was working 50 hours maybe a week. I was working across time zones, like I had to deal with Australia right to the US and every time zone in between. And so I found myself really struggling with, for me, it was like, is this what being an entrepreneur is? And again, it's about trying and saying to yourself what is important for you. So when that contract ended, and it didn't end too long ago, and I was asked to resubmit a proposal to that organization, and I actually backed away from it, and I took some time to think about what is important for me. I am getting older, so that's the one thing. But I realized that I actually want time to myself, time to think, time to solution, time to actually just enjoy what I have, and that kind of thing. So conscientiously, I now decided I'm not working an 8-hour day. I'm working a 6-hour day. That's the important thing. And I decided I'm not working on a Friday.
Well
So
done.
I work 4 hours, 6 hours for 4 days a week. That's not to say like if something is urgent, I won't do it. But it's something that I'm doing for myself, from for my own sanity, for my own well-being. It just allows me to, like, Friday is a day dedicated to me. I read up, I watch videos, there's a spiritual side to it that I lock myself into, but it's my time. It's my time to explore, to be curious, to prepare for the weekend if I have to, but it's my time. So it's really important for me to do that. But yeah, so that's where I find myself, is that I've done the journey in terms of, it's been 3 years now that I've transitioned into being a solopreneur. I've done the soul searching, the filtering. I've taken on some good contracts that uh, sucked a little bit of my soul away from me, but it was there and was work. And now I get to choose what I want to do and whom I want to work with, and really connect with like-minded individuals at this point in time. And so finding people who I can learn from, uh, like constantly learn from them, looking at new opportunities, seeing where else I can apply it, has been an interesting journey for me.
Great. And then on the other side, so far, what has been for you your biggest win or triumph, and how did that come about?
I think really finding my voice as somebody that is passionate about the youth development space in on the African continent, and you don't necessarily think about it too much, like what is the voice that you. I actually reached out to a coach because just shortly before the contract with the company ended, the previous contract that I had, I was just at crossroads because I was like, I kind of got used to the money because it was stable income. Over a 2-year period, you kind of get used to the income. And I reached out, and I spoke to a business and a life coach, and it was very interesting. I mean, this lady that I spoke to, she said to me, "Well, I have had a look at your LinkedIn profile. Nothing on your LinkedIn profile talks to me about you being passionate about youth." And I'm thinking, "God, I repost opportunity." Like in my head, I'm thinking I repost job opportunities. I comment on things that are. There's nothing that's really speaks to me being really vested in this youth development space. And so she says, "Well,
I want to quickly come in on that point, because I think there's an interesting point there to make around. In fact, I made a post this week around the concept of solopreneurs being like jack of all trades. So in some way, we have to be jack of all trades. So we have, or Jill of all trades. We have to wear so many hats and be good at so many things. And clearly, you are good at so many things. And then you've had kind of that push to say, hang on, it's one thing to be good at many things, but to actually thrive, people have to know you for that one thing.
mm,
So I introduced the kind of the catchphrase to say you have to be master of all trades and known for one.
yes." And that really resonated with me, that post that you put on LinkedIn, right? So I had to really think about it. I had been toying with this idea of doing a series. Originally, it was going to be a podcast, and like, okay, I need to do a podcast around gearing young people up for the job market, like giving them some really insightful tips on all of that. And I think that kind of the thought of him, like, going and getting the camera and learning how to video edit and all of those lovely things stuck in my head. And the more I thought about it, the more it overwhelmed me. And I was like, oh, let's just do it as LinkedIn posts. And so I am fortunate that I have a daughter who is a digital marketer. So I said to her, "This is what I want to do. Can you give me like a look and feel about this?" So she's like, she looked at the one that I did. She goes, "Mom, this is so out of date, and like you're not talking to any one of us around this, and you use too much of words." And like,
Very,
yeah, but if I don't use the words, I'm not going to get the message across. So we keep having this thing.
very
So
true.
I do the long version. She edits it into 4 or 5 really nice, like a 4 or 5 slide carousel on LinkedIn, and then it goes out. We try to keep it on a weekly basis, but she's done that. But what has been interesting about this Dear Young Talent um, series that I'm doing on LinkedIn is that young people are actually reaching out to me saying, can you do something about entrepreneurship? And others are saying to me, I'm really interested in artificial intelligence and machine learning, and I've done the courses, but how do you break into the space? People are saying to me, I can't get a full-time job. And so things like how do you work in a gig economy is a proposition that I could actually put together and talk about it, not only because it's something that's really relevant and could solve some of the issues we face in South Africa. But now that I have experience of it, I can talk to it a little bit better. So again, it's spotting the opportunities. And to your point, you have to be so many things if you're a solopreneur. And the one thing I knew I was really bad at was finances, not managing finances, but just the compliance aspects of being tax compliant and everything else. And I was like, no way am I pulling books and doing that. I can keep a rolling spreadsheet on my income and expenditure, but hell, don't ask me to do the SARS thing and all of that. So I pay. It's something that I'm willing to pay for to take the pain away from me a little bit. And so the accounting aspects gets outsourced. It's something that I do, and I do realize that this is not a luxury that every solopreneur has. But your point, I remember being in corporate, and when it was budget time every year, I literally used to lock myself up for 2 weeks. Nobody bothered me. I used to stay at home, and I used to go through. It stressed me out beyond words, and I used to like with a fine tooth comb go through line by line on the budget what I'm planning for next year, understand it back to back, then have a meeting with the finance manager, like, are you happy with this? Does this make sense to you? When he said yes, I would breathe. And I didn't want to be that, because I really believe there's some things that block you. And I listen to a lot of people in solopreneurships and that kind of thing. There's always something that hampers them. And it's either a make or break moment for you as a solopreneur. I did not want to be bogged down by the financial aspects of the thing, so I was quite willing to pay for somebody to do it. And you might find that marketing might not be something that you do, or I think sales, you got to own that a little bit. Although you might not be good at it, it's something that you got to learn to do. So for me, that's really
If I
important.
can come in here quickly. So on this point of solopreneurs having something that holds them back, I mean, partly that's why we are doing soloSei, because we realize that there are so many solopreneurs out there that they're very good at what they do. They're masters of their craft, but somehow some of the other business skills are probably not exactly there for them. So it can be a combination of they don't have the skill, or they just simply don't have the passion for it, or they really dislike doing that part. So whether, and I hear this a lot of solopreneurs are telling me like, oh, I love the flexibility of being my own boss and being a solopreneur, but I really hate selling. So you have two options: either develop that skill, and make sure that you shift your mindset around it. And because I truly believe when you are good at something, you start enjoying it, because
Yes.
when you experience the results from something that you do, it's pleasurable. It's
Yes.
fun. So either develop the skill or outsource it. Find somebody to do that for you,
Yeah.
which is what you've done. Say, okay, so here's a part that either I can go and develop the financial management skills or the admin skills or whatever, or I can say, hey, this is not the best use of my time. Let me find somebody to do that part. And I guess here's a question for you. How would you advise solopreneurs to decide on what to outsource and what to keep for themselves? What do they need to do themselves, and what do they give away?
So for me, it's what stresses you the most about your job. Like, you've got so many roles to play. You're a salesperson, and business development is a key part of it. There's marketing, which is totally, and people mistaken the two. That's there. There's the creation, the solutioning part of the business. There's the financial aspects of the business, and then there's already the client management aspect of it as well, because you got to do all of that. I thrive on relationships, so I knew that managing relationships is not going to be a problem. I had some idea of how to do marketing, but not necessarily the best way of doing marketing. And it's a skill that I had to learn, in terms of keeping the brand of what I do alive. And finances, I knew initially it was like, oh, I'll just get the money and I'll keep the thing. And then, like, you get a notification that, this is due. And I'm like, oh, damn, I don't know how to do this. And also finding some, it's about, again, it's the first accountant I had, that didn't understand a thing that I did. Couldn't understand how that there was no assets to this company. Yeah, I'm in a service space, right? He was like, so how do you make your money? I'm like, okay, so do you have any expenses? I'm like, minimal. The only asset I have is my laptop and probably the hardware that surrounds the laptop. Okay, do you have any expenses? I'm like, no, I don't. And I think he shocked me when he told me that after the first, because I had to transition from being transition to being a provisional taxpayer. And the first provisional tax bill he gave me was for 200,000 Rand that I owed SARS. And I was like, what? That's almost all the money that I earned in the last couple, that's the profit that I made in the last couple months.
Yes.
And then I was like, no. And then I was not getting any responses from him. And I was introduced to another accountant by my husband of all people. And she took the time to actually understand what I did. And she, her ability, I would not have been able to do it. If I did myself, I would have been a very compliant taxpayer that just went and filled in, because I don't understand tax, right? I don't think you either. We'll just fill in the form. Is this the income? These are the expenses, that kind of thing. But she found not necessarily loopholes, but tax alleviation points for me in the fact that I do not reside in South Africa, that I work, so she found, and she reduced that bill. Like I ended up paying a 10th of what was owed, it was like, that's why I pay her. That's why I'm paying her, because I'm not a financial expert. So, as much as we think we want to be able to do everything ourselves, it's not necessarily a bad idea to get a professional in to actually help you. The same with the talent, the marketing part. It's like keeping that brand of youth development up in my space. It was like, oh, okay. So, and unfortunately, I asked my daughter, right? I mean, I'm leaning into her, partially because, I paid for your education in the space.
She knows you.
She knows me. Like, can you just have a look at this and give me some ideas? And she was like, oh, Mom, you need to do it like this. I'm like, okay. So if I send you this on a weekly basis, would you be able to bring it? And she goes, yes. It doesn't take her long. I mean, she's like literally can turn over the stuff to me in 2 hours, given the time difference that we have.
If she's clever and she speaks to your accountant, she will position herself as an expense and say, hey, Mom, you need some expenses, so pay me.
No, I'll not get them talking. So it's that kind of thing. It's to actually recognize that, and it's a very hard conversation to have with yourself in terms of what are you really, what in the business, again, it's like, it's playing to your strengths. And I've always been, even in corporate, I knew the strengths of my team. Process work goes to this person, financial work goes to this person, things regarding presentations goes to this. So I knew that, but to have to reflect on yourself and think about what are my strengths, and actually work to that, because that's where you are at your best and adding the most value to your business. Quite a difficult conversation you have to have with yourself. Because I really thought I knew marketing. I mean, I did marketing. It was when I did my honors degree, that was my top performing subject. I knew I know the principles of marketing. I can put a marketing strategy together, but actually to reach the audience that I needed to reach wasn't necessarily my marketing strategy in its right space, right? So that was a difficult conversation for me to have. I always thought I couldn't do sales because in a corporate environment, it's not a skill that you practice a lot. Because again, we think about sales as like a hardcore sell. Like I have a product or a service that I can offer you and you pay for it.
Come and knock on your door and say,
yes,
hey,
yeah, it's like I feel like the vacuum cleaner.
Can I interest you in my cookies?
And it actually isn't.
Yeah.
It actually isn't. And again, it was, and I started thinking again back on my journey in corporate, and particularly at Standard Bank when I first started off. And your development used to happen, via graduate program, and they just started off this whole concept of learnerships that had been introduced into the South African market. And they had 25 people on the learnership program, and they were getting there's a tax incentive involved, and then you get funding from the CETA, and they were getting like 100,000 rand, and they thought it was great amount of money. And I managed in 1 year, I can't remember which year it was, the tax incentive we got back from SARS was close to 250 million rands. It was the single largest tax incentive, tax deduction that the bank could claim at that point in time. And I received over 60 million rand worth of funding from the CETA. And then I realized that I was actually doing sales without actually calling it sales, was the ability to influence people to do. I know you want to run this program, but if we do it like this, we can get this, and we can get this, and we can get this. And then going to the CETA and saying, hey, we're looking at this qualification. It doesn't quite meet the match. We're massaging it a bit because this is the opportunity we could provide young people. So I'd been doing it all my life. And it's when you have that realization and start thinking about, are you able to influence somebody to see a different perspective, firstly? Are you able to show benefit or value that could add to that particular individual or that business? And can you actually deliver it? Those are the three things that you need to worry about.
It was a very quick masterclass in sales.
Was it? Oh,
And that's exactly what it's about, right?
Yeah. And so that was it. And and for me, it was, the proof is always in the pudding, right? So it was the ability, when I was in the bank, the ability to tell the stories of the young people whose lives we impacted, and that's how, like, really, hardcore executives that are like, I don't want don't want this in my space, started turning their heads and going, oh, is this the kind of impact we're going to have? Then starting to build on that story and telling that story becomes really, really important. And for me, that is really, and also the other thing I've learned over the years is, and it used to irritate me, was at the bank when people used to come with a solution. They have no ideas. Like, here, this program, it will work for you because, and I'm like, no, that's not my pain point at this point in time. But really understanding the pain points of your client or your customer is really, really important. And listening and distilling that information. In fact, I met with another good friend of mine yesterday, and he's become a mentor in many ways, and he was telling me about how he does sales, and how well he researches his client before he goes into a meeting, but how he spends 80% of his time listening.
Research, listening. What more can we say? I mean, that's
listening, and then not offering a solution, but getting the client to almost wanting to partner with you in getting to the solution that's going to add more value to them. So it's that kind of, I haven't mastered that skill. I'm by no means claiming to be a master at it. But what I'm finding is that where you can show value and you understand where the pain points of your client is, that's where you really can turn a lead into a proper revenue generation thing for you.
To almost tie a bow around this, at the end of the day, clients buy when they trust that the solution that you propose will deliver on what they expect.
Yeah.
And the key to getting to that point of trust is, firstly, they have to feel that you understood their solution or their context or their problem. And how do you make them understand? How do you get that to them? You show them that you've done your homework, and you listen and make them feel that you've listened. And once you've done that, with even before you've put the solution on the table, they already have a sense of trust. Because whatever
Yeah.
solution you will come with, whatever the solution is, they already expect that because you did your homework and because you listened, the solution is very likely to be hitting the point.
Yeah.
If you haven't done that, if you haven't gotten them to that point where they know that you've researched and listened to them, whatever solution you will put on the table, they will just see as a sales pitch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So interesting stuff that. But it's like I say, it doesn't come overnight. It comes with practice and being conscientious about it in terms of what do you want to be known for.
So we have a few minutes left, and what I want to do in the last few minutes, I want you to almost give us, for each one of the pillars of our soloSei skills model, to give us one tip that you think would be useful for people to take away. So something that you learned that has helped you. So, and the categories of shape, show, serve, and sell. Shape is about how do we kind of research and build a solution and offering to the market from what you have. So what is your tip? How can solopreneurs first shape a solution to their potential market?
I think always being on top of trends and topics that that concern your area of expertise is important. And don't stick to the traditional. I mean, who would have thought years ago that we could, think of bringing artificial intelligence into the world of education and youth development and that kind of. Would have thought about remote opportunities for young people so we're still keeping the intellectual capital in South Africa. We're still keeping the talent there. We're still keeping the money there, which is really, really important. But to start looking at what are the things that are shaping the space at the moment. So if you want, it's not only about you shaping your own value and that kind of thing. It's about understanding what is shaping that area of expertise that you are in, because that's where you spot the opportunities, right? Because if you are a solopreneur, the chances are you're really good at connecting the dots, and that's the key part of it. It's like, what is shaping, what are the opportunities, what value can I add?
I think there's such a crucial thing that you are saying in there, and I think a lot of young people get caught in this. So it's not about, I mean, one small piece is about figuring yourself out, but the bigger piece is figuring out the market. What is out there to do? Where are the opportunities to create value and earn revenue from creating that
Yeah.
value? And then link that to say, okay, so if that's the set of opportunities out there, which one am I best positioned to deliver and add value to from my skills and my passion point of view? So start with the market, not start with yourself.
Yeah.
This is, I think, the message out of that. Okay, next category, show. What is your number one tip for kind of putting yourself out there as, this is me, this is what I have to offer?
So I think, I think of a solopreneur. I just think of how hard people might have had it in the 90s and 80s without social media. You have platforms that are so easily available and accessible. If you're stuck with it, you watch a YouTube video, you get it going. But keeping your voice consistent on the social media platforms is really, really important. And it's showing your value all the time. I think one of the things is, how do you remain top of mind while you are asleep? Is one of the things that you mentioned in your in the skills, and that is it's always about your profile on social media, because that's where we play most of the time. It's like, how do people remember you? And so for me, it has been, like young people will always go to my LinkedIn profile because I'm always posting new opportunities for them. The Dear Young Talent series is looking for things. People who know me as somebody in the youth development space will always go to things that I repost or I make a comment on. We'll have a look at that. So it's always, I am not necessarily selling at that point in time. I'm not doing sales at that point in time, but people are still thinking about me when they are having all sorts of kind of thoughts in their minds, like, oh, like maybe I should go to May's profile now, like a young person, and May normally posts things. I'm looking for a job. Let me go and see what she's reposted, or that kind of thing, and people that know me know that I have a whole range of social causes and things, that social impact stuff and the AI stuff that I constantly look at reposting. We'll go and look at like what else is she thinking about, what is in her space. So I think understanding how social media works, and it's not necessarily about likes, right? It's about really, really getting people to understand what you are all about.
Yeah, be that front of mind, that first person that come up for your thing. So if your thing
Yes.
is youth employability, whomever's in your network, if whenever they have something around youth employability, Maymoona should be the first person that comes up in their mind.
Yes.
How do you put yourself out there? With that, I think what I'm getting from you is that consistent messaging that this is me, this is what I do.
Yeah.
Next category, sell. So you've already actually give us a few really good gems on sales. I want to ask you a very specific question in the sales category. When a client pushes back on price, you give a proposal and say, hey, I can do X for you for this much money. And the client says, oh, this is outside of our budget, or can you come down by 20%? How do you handle it?
That kind of threw me. It is difficult.
Yeah.
Again, because most of my work comes from people in my network. It's even more difficult if somebody is you have a personal relationship with, to say no to. But somewhere along the line, you need to know what your value is. And so again, the research is really, really important. And it's so easy these days. Now, I was showing a group of young kids the other day. We're talking about like planning. It's a project administration leadership, and we're talking about planning a budget for a project. Like how do you do that? And we used a party planning, event planning as a thing, and we're like, how do you do that? I'm like, where do you want to hold it? And they go like, I'm like, this is how you prompt the AI, guys, and you get a range of things that come out to you. You can find out what is the range that you want to work in. um, I think for me, it's also looking at different types of models, costing models that work for you. And I there's a huge part of being a solopreneur in like a consultancy kind of business, that you spend a lot of time on admin and research and attending meetings and all of that. It's your time, right? So the way I have structured it is there's a retainer that I work on to take care of all of those peripheral kind of time consuming things that if I had to write that out, it's and you think about a legal bill that comes to you, right? They charge you for the photocopy, they charge you for the and that irks people, and it rubs them up the wrong way. I don't particularly want to tell you that I attended a meeting for 15 minutes, or somebody called me and I attended to this query for 10 minutes, because it's going to be onerous on me to keep record of all of those things. So there's a model that I've now started using quite consistently, Is it a retainer that I charge for all of those kinds of things? But then specifically for facilitation, specifically for content development, specifically on things, there's a rate that I charge. And I'm aware of kind of the range that I'm comfortable with. I think you need to determine that for yourself upfront and know when to say no. And sometimes it's a difficult decision, but it's a decision, because you think about a solopreneur and you think, I'm saying goodbye to this money. I think it's really important that you know what you are comfortable with in that space in terms of negotiating up and down. I mean, I've had a recent instance where I asked for a retainer and they said, look, we'll pay you for your sessions and all of that, but the retainer, can you bring it down a little bit? And I was like, no, really, I can't. It's like really having this conversation in my head. And then I thought about, you've got to balance a few things. This is a contract that I can see being renewed. So I can see the projects rolling out further. Am I willing to make that concession now so that it can continue? So there's the longevity of that project that you need to consider. And it's a client that's going to give you recurring business, then by all means, take the cut and have the longevity of the contract. So I don't think there's a straightforward answer. I know I'm doing this in a very roundabout way. There's not a straightforward answer. You've got to balance so many things in your head. As a solopreneur, it's like, how important is this income to me right now? Is it like making the cut make financial sense in the long run for me? Is it really?
The point that you're making there is, I think, the context, the time and context of the situation also dictates. So sometimes if you are, just the reality is, if you're out of work and you desperately to have some revenue for this month, then take whatever's on the table. And if a client pushes you, and and if you're not in a position to say no, then don't say no.
Yes.
In a different context, you are in a position to say no, then say no. So
Yeah.
I think that's an important point as well, an important takeaway.
Yeah. So for me, those things are really like it's so, to your point, context specific, but it's also very a personal discussion, like a very personal thing for me in terms of you also don't want to sell your soul to the devil, right? That's the other part of it. So what balances everything? What am I prepared to give? What am I prepared to let go? And that kind of thing. So yeah, there's trade-offs, and you need to decide which trade-off is most important to you.
Great. Good answer. Last category, serve. So this is about delivery. Once you've made the sale, you clinched the deal, and now you have to deliver on a client, to deliver to your promises. What is the one thing that you would say solopreneurs need to adopt as a skill or attitude or an approach that helps them to consistently meet client expectations?
Yeah. Look, I think for me, it's understanding, and I've always been in, like, I'm not a contractor in this relationship. I'm your partner. I am partnering with you to deliver this. And sometimes it's a give and take on either side of the equation. So like I said to you, I've decided I'm working 4 days a week. And then suddenly there's a meeting on a Friday and I'm like, but I told you I'm working 4 days a week. No, it's not that. It's just like, you again have boundaries, but don't be hung up on them in any way whatsoever. There's a degree of flexibility. If they're trying to extort you, that's another story altogether. But there's some things that I will do for, like, it's not going to cost me anything extra. It's knowledge that I have. I can see the value that's going to add to the project. You need to be flexible around that as well. I also feel like this thing about and I remember sometimes um, we used to have these really expensive consultants coming in to work with us, like Deloitte and, Accenture and all of those big names that used to come in. And sometimes they'd be telling us things that we already know, or things we could Google and actually get the answer to. And sometimes, the client is going to ask you something and you think, well, I can charge him for it or I can charge her for it. And you think, but if you just do this, you'd be able to get it. You don't actually need me to tell you how to do this. And sometimes it's just pointing them in the right direction. So a little bit help support in the right direction helps them, because if they can see they're saving money, or you're helping them achieve what they need to achieve while saving them the money, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I've said no to running a series of workshops that I charge for per session, by combining two groups of people into one session. And the client is appreciative of that, because it's because then they know you actually have their best interests at heart. Again, it's about that creating that trust that you would be able to, and trust it's hard earned and it can be lost so quickly if you just do the wrong thing. So it's just consistently remembering that you want to have the client coming back to you for similar issues or different issue that you might be able to solve for. And it's how do you create that trust? And so sometimes it's not always chasing the money or the additional income or revenue that you could get from the client. It's about, hey, I can help you here, or I can add value here without charging you for it, and this is how you do it. And that, I think, just helps build credibility.
Say the most unloyal client is the client who feels that they've been taken advantage of. And the most loyal client is the client that feels that they got more than what they paid for.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
True words.
Okay, so to conclude, I would want you to share with me a quote or an anecdote that you feel that's an anchor for you, something that you go back to, that inspires you consistently and that other people would benefit from as well.
Haha. That's a nice question. There's so many quotes that I could choose, but when I saw some of the questions you were going to ask me, I had to think about it, really. So, I think the one quote for me that really keeps me grounded more than anything else, because you can actually get quite carried away in the space with your own success. Um, and it's a poem by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it reads, "To laugh often and much, to win the respect of the intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know that life has breathed easier because you lived here. This is to have succeeded."
Beautiful. Thank you.
So that really, it reminds me to stay human, to stay humble, and to be grateful for every little thing that I have in my life.
Fantastic. So, thank you, Maymoona, for so generously sharing your story, your life experiences. There's been plenty of amazing nuggets of wisdom that I think people will find a lot of value from. Thank you for volunteering to be a soloSei legend. And you definitely exceeded the expectations that I created.
Oh, thank you. That's good to hear. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been a really nice conversation. I've enjoyed sharing my experiences. I just think for me, and I always laugh about, when people say sharing is caring, but really, why let others suffer through their misery when they can learn from you as well? So great opportunity, and thank you for this initiative. I think it's going to really, really help lots of people across the globe.
Inshallah. So
I mean, thank you.